I mocked that he would be on the streets without my money, but few days later he did this.
Not all that glitter is gold. I ruined my marriage as a result of my greed. I don't even know where to start my story from. I'm so ashamed of my actions. I cheated on my husband with his boss, who happens to be my ex-boyfriend. Don't judge me, guys. I honestly regret my actions. I thought I could literally eat my cake and have it. Everything backfired in a twinkle of an eye. Now I'm at a crossroad and I don't know what to do. I honestly don't wish this on my worst enemy. I'm in a state of a fiasco right now. I regret everything. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would do things differently. I cheated on my husband with his boss, who is my ex-boyfriend, and now he's on the verge of finding out. I regret my actions. I don't know what to do. I'm at a crossroads right now. I don't want to lose my marriage, and most importantly, I don't want my husband to stop working for my ex-boyfriend. Don't judge me, guys. Before you judge me, please listen to my story. Maybe then you would understand why I did what I did. Hi guys, my name is Olivia, and I am 29 years old. The name of my husband is Anthony, and he is 30 years old. Anthony and I got married 2 years ago. Anthony is the best thing that has ever happened to me. He is the absolute love of my life. My marriage to Anthony was a beautiful one. He pampered me and treated me like a queen. I never lacked anything. He provided everything I needed and even placed my parents on a monthly stipend. He got me my very first car immediately after our wedding, and on our first wedding anniversary, he bought a house for me. Anthony is not just a generous giver. He is a very kind man. I don't know what came over me. I ruined my beautiful marriage. I can still remember that fateful day like it was yesterday. Our lives changed forever. We went from living in a comfortable apartment to living in a shared apartment. It still feels like a dream. I practically lost everything on that fateful day, including my husband. Anthony became a shadow of himself. He went from being a happy, jovial guy to a complete sadist. He always snapped at me for any little thing. He was doing some menial job, but that was barely enough. We couldn't afford the luxury lifestyle we were used to any longer. Anthony's boss sized everything we owned. The cars, house, and even his accounts were frozen. He was almost arrested, but the properties seized were enough to cover for the money. At some point, I got tired of everything. I got so used to living like a queen that I wasn't happy with the way we were living. Anthony kept assuring me that everything would be fine, but that wasn't enough. I wanted him to be as rich as he was before. I decided to help him out. I wished I never did. If I could go back in time, I would do things differently. Seeing Anthony sad always made me ask my ex-boyfriend for a favor. Don't judge me, guys. I was helpless and desperate. I wanted to help my husband back on his feet. Jake was willing to help, but on a condition. Jake proposed I sleep with him just once and he would secure my husband a good job in a reputable company. I refused initially, but decided to go through with it after pondering on the whole situation for some days. I told Anthony about the job offer and he was very excited. The joy on his face when he heard someone was willing to give him a job was the only sign I needed to go ahead. I wanted to see him back on his feet again, and most importantly, I wanted to start living large again. Anthony loves being an engineer. It's something he loves doing. So he was very happy when I told him about the job. Getting a good job ever since he lost his job has been hard because no one wants to employ an alleged thief. So he was excited that someone was willing to give him a chance. I met with Jake the next day and we slept together. I felt horrible at first, but I shook off the guilt and convinced myself I wasn't wrong. I was doing everything for my beloved husband. Jake kept his promise and offered Anthony a job in his company, but unfortunately I couldn't bring myself to tell Anthony the whole truth. I didn't tell him Jake was my ex-boyfriend. I actually lied to him. I lied to him that Jake was my cousin's fiance. I know the man married. I knew there was no way he would accept the job if he knew Jake was my ex-boyfriend. Anthony is a very principled man. He would rather remain jobless than seek favors from someone he knew I dated before. So I kept everything to myself. I cried myself to bed for 3 consecutive days. I was in denial for some days. I couldn't believe I cheated on my husband and broke our marriage vows. I was emotionally down. Anthony noticed my mood and asked what was wrong with me. Guys, honestly, at that point, I wanted to confess everything to him, but I didn't have the courage to do that. I was scared of what he would do if he found out I cheated on him. After thinking of how everything would go wrong if he finds out, I lied to him that nothing was wrong with me and that I was just under the weather. At that point, I knew I had to shake up the guilt before I got caught. One thing about telling lies is because you need more lies to cover up. I wasn't happy lying to my husband. We promised each other that we would be transparent in our marriage, but here I was, breaking that promise. My affair with Jake continued. I couldn't bring myself to stop seeing Jake. The truth is, Jake is my first love. I had known him ever since we were kids. The only reason I left him was because he wasn't rich. I dumped him to marry Anthony because Anthony was a very rich man when we met, and Jake wasn't earning much then, but fortunately for him, he is filthy rich now. I started regretting not being patient with Jake when I saw how rich he became when I left. I wished I was a little bit patient with him. Maybe I wouldn't have ended up with Anthony. Don't get me wrong, guys, Anthony is a good man, but I never really loved him. His generosity was what drew me to him, and he wasn't physically attractive like Jake. Everything was going so well, my affair with Jake continued to blossom. It got to a stage that I was no longer feeling bad about cheating on Anthony. Although at times I do feel bad for him, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Jake, on the other hand, was busy spoiling me with gifts. He was always gifting things, from expensive clothes to shoes and jewelry. My love affair with Jake continued to the point that we were no longer discreet. One day, Anthony almost caught me with Jake. I was on a date with Jake. I didn't know someone took a picture of me and Jake together and sent it to Anthony. Anthony called me and inquired where I was. I didn't know what was happening, so I lied to him I was at home. He kept calling and repeating the same question. It was at that point I knew something was wrong. I quickly ended my dinner date with Jake, but luckily for me, I saw Anthony's cousin at the same restaurant. She was trying to hide, but I caught a glimpse of her. At that point, everything finally made sense. Apparently, she took a picture of me and Jake. On my way home, I was scared and visibly shaking. It felt like my entire world was crashing down. I knew I had to act fast, else I would lose my marriage. Luckily for me, I got home before Anthony. That gave me enough time to think of something. When Anthony arrived that day, he was angry and fuming with anger. I quickly came up with a lie to save my marriage. I told him I went to see his boss with my cousin. You guys remember I told him Jake was my cousin's fiance, right? So I told him I went there with my cousin to properly thank Jake for offering him a job, and that at some point my cousin caught an urgent call and left us there to go attend something. So he asked me why I lied earlier. I told him I wanted it to be a surprise. Somehow he brought the lie. That night was very emotional for me. He apologized for doubting and not trusting me. He made me promise never to lie to him again. At that point, I felt bad that I didn't know when I started crying uncontrollably. Here I was, cheating on the only man in the whole world that I know would gladly give up his life for me. Anthony doesn't deserve this. I know he would break into pieces if he ever finds out I have been cheating on him and lying to cover up my extramarital affair. I'm at a crossroad right now. I feel bad for my husband. What should I do? Should I confess everything to my husband Anthony and stop my affair with Jake? Or should I just enjoy all the attention and love I'm getting from Jake? Please, I need advice. Update. Hi guys, I'm back to update you guys. I didn't confess. I couldn't bring myself to do that. I didn't want to lose my marriage and I didn't want to break Anthony's hearts. I continued my affair with Jake, but unfortunately for me, I got. Yes, guy, Anthony caught me. I thought I would be the one to confess everything to Anthony. I never envisioned getting caught by Anthony. On one fateful day, I forgot my phone in the sitting room and took a nap. I don't know what prompted Anthony to go through my phone because he had never done that before. That was how he discovered I was cheating on him, but he didn't know who I was cheating on him with. Hell literally broke loose when Anthony discovered I was cheating on him. He woke me up from my nap and dragged me out. I was shocked because I have never seen him like that before. He started hauling insults at me. I was lost for a few seconds. It was when he threw the phone at me and saw those messages that I understood what he was talking about. He started throwing my things out one after the other and asked me to leave his house. I couldn't believe my eyes, guys. It was as if Anthony was acting under the influence of something. I was in shock. I fell on my knees and started begging him to forgive me, but all efforts to get to listen to me proved abortive. The more I tried, the angrier he became. The worst part was that I was literally freezing to the death. He told me he was no longer interested in the marriage, that I should be prepared to receive divorce papers. He told me he started suspecting I was cheating on him a long time ago and was only waiting on the right opportunity to get evidence. I tried explaining to him that everything I did was for him, but he paid deaf ears to me. After exhausting all options, I decided to resort to emotional blackmail. I told him he should have gone ahead and tried, but he can't divorce me because we will be financially ruined because he would lose his job if he divorced me. I told him I was cheating on him with his boss, who is my ex-boyfriend, and that I did it to help him secure a job. I can still remember the shock on his face when I told him this. He almost had a heart attack. He got more upset when I told him I did everything for his sake. At that point, nothing prepared me for what he did next. Anthony gave me 3 dirty slaps. It happened so fast I was shocked, guys. I never knew I married a violent man. Anthony was fuming with rage. I picked a few of my things and left. I went to my best friend's place. I wanted to go to Jake's house, but I called him and he told me he was on a business trip. All through that day, I was sad. I didn't know Anthony was an ingrate. How could he still throw me out even though I told him I did everything for him? Don't judge me, guys. I'm not justifying my affair with Jake, but how inconsiderate can Anthony be? He didn't care that I was freezing outside. He even gave me 3 dirty slaps. My cheeks were swollen. I cried to sleep that day. It took getting caught for me to realize I wronged Anthony. At that point, I made up my mind to break things off completely with Jake. Suddenly, all the expensive clothes, shoes, and jewelry didn't matter to me anymore. All I wanted was my husband. I was 100% confident that we could work on our marriage. I was so sure Anthony would not be able to divorce me since he would risk losing his job if he ever did that. I knew what that job meant to him. That day, I was unable to sleep. Time went by very fast. I got a call from Anthony the next day. The joy on my face that day when he called me was magical. I had butterflies in my stomach. He asked me to come to the house and he had a surprise for me. I was very excited that I didn't even remember to shower before dashing out. I think the thought of reuniting with my husband must have clouded my sense of reasoning, but nothing prepared me for the surprise I got when I arrived at our apartment. I was surprised to see my parents and even Anthony. I was surprised why almost everyone was gathered there. I tried greeting everyone, but they all ignored me, including my parents. I was dumbfounded. While I was still trying to make sense of everything, Anthony arrived and everything began to make sense. It was then it occurred to me that Anthony called me there to disgrace me. He brought out his phone and showed everyone compromising pictures of me and Jake together. Apparently, he sent those pictures to his phone the day he had access to my phone. I was embarrassed. I wanted the ground to open so badly so I could disappear. My parents felt so embarrassed they were ashamed of me. The look on their faces said it all. It was at that point I bursted into tears. I couldn't hold my tears any longer. How can everyone judge me without hearing from me what actually happened? Even my parents that were supposed to stand up for me bowed their heads in shame. Worst part is, Anthony narrated the story in a way that painted me like the devil himself. He told everyone I married him for his money and not because I really loved him. He said it took him losing his job to realize that. He told them how I changed and turned into a monster immediately. He lost his job and could no longer provide for me. He didn't stop there. He went ahead to tell them I started having an affair with my ex-boyfriends for money when he couldn't afford to cater for my numerous, and how I made one of my ex-boyfriends employ him. At that point, I could not stand the defamation. I decided to talk. I told everyone Anthony was lying and that everything I did was for him. I told them I only cheated because I wanted to secure a job for my husband. It was at that point Anthony's mom stood up and gave me a dirty slap. She started calling me names. My parents couldn't take the embarrassment any longer, so they walked out. I ran after them to explain everything to them, but they warned me never to ever come near them. I went back to my friend's place because Anthony was still angry. The anger was justified. I thought he would forgive me, and Will would work everything out when he was calmer, but Anthony proved me wrong. 3 days later, I got a call from someone who introduced himself as a lawyer. I gave the lawyer my address, and in less than 30 minutes, he arrived with divorce papers. I was shocked, guys. I almost passed out. It took everything in me for me to keep standing on my feet. I flinged the divorce papers away and instantly booked a ride to Anthony's house. I was shocked when I got there and the house was empty. I only met my things outside. Anthony burnt all the designer clothes and shoes Jake bought for me. He burnt all my valuables to ashes, things that cost millions. I don't even know how he saw them because I hid those things carefully. Luckily for me, I saw the expensive diamonds Jake got for me scattered on the ground. I picked them up with tears in my eyes. I was seriously weeping, guys. I never knew I married a monster. Out of rage, I picked up my phone and called Jake. I asked to please do me a favor and sack Anthony immediately when he got back from his business trip. I wanted to teach him a lesson he would never forget. I know he will come back crying to me when he loses the job. Then we will settle, and I will ask Jake to give him back the job. But unfortunately for me, things didn't go the way I anticipated. I got the biggest shock of my life when Jake told me. He was informed Anthony resigned from the job. I couldn't believe my ears. I felt like my whole world had crumbled. It was game over for me, guys. I tried calling Anthony several times, but he wasn't responding to my calls. He even blocked me at some point. After all efforts to reach him proved abortive. I gave up and decided to sign the divorce papers. It wasn't easy to make that decision. I wanted to fight for our marriage, but Anthony wasn't leaving any room for that. Soon the divorce proceedings started. It was mentally draining. I was exhausted all through. Every time we came to the court, I tried talking to Anthony to tell him the whole truth, but he refused to listen to me. He wouldn't even look at me. He despised me, and he didn't hide that fact. Since there was no property to share or children involved, our divorce was finalized sooner than expected. That was the worst day of my life. I cried all through that day. I knew I just lost a gem. I knew I would never find a man like Anthony ever again. Anthony was a good man. Even when he lost his job, he still made sure he provided food for me. I never went to bed hungry. Anthony put my needs before his. Where will I ever find such a man again? Update. Hi guys, I'm back again to update you guys on my life after the divorce. After the divorce, I decided to just forge ahead and continue with my life. I got tired of crying my eyes out. Worst of all was that I was very broke. I used all my savings to pay the lawyer that handled the divorce case. In fact, the money wasn't enough. I had to borrow from my friend to complete the payment. I decided to go back to Jake since I was already divorced and single. I went to his house because he had not been picking my calls. I got another heartbreak when I arrived at Jake's house. I met a lady who introduced herself to me as Jake's fiancée. I was shocked, guys. A few seconds later, Jake arrived and was furious at me for coming to his house. He dragged me out and warned me never to come to him ever again. He told me he only used me and wanted to prove the point that I was a gold digger. I was shocked, guys. I wasn't expecting to hear that from him. I felt ashamed of myself. He said he only took revenge on me. He told me he was happy I'm divorced and that now he's glad I finally have the feeling of what it means to be dumped. I was sad, guys. I felt used. He threw me out of his house and asked me never to return again. Everything felt like a film trick. I never expected such a dubious character from him. Anyways, I cleaned my eyes and decided to count my losses. I decided to move on, but it wasn't easy. I was broke. I would have sold the designers Jake gifted me if Anthony didn't burn them to hashes. After searching for jobs with getting any, I decided to sell off the diamonds. I took the diamonds to a jewelry store, and to my surprise, they told me the diamonds were fake. I felt embarrassed. I was almost arrested for trying to sell off a fake diamond. Can you guys imagine? I'm sure the designer's clothes were fake too. How gullible can one be? Jake took advantage of my naiveness and ruined my marriage. I can't believe I allowed him to destroy the beautiful union I built with my husband. I was perplexed. Everything was a lie. Jake fooled me. He saw how helpless I was and he took advantage of me. But unfortunately, it was too late to cry over spilled milk. Anthony, on the other hand, got his back. His boss called him back after he discovered Anthony was betrayed by his business partner and that he didn't actually steal the money. He got everything back. The house and cars were replaced with even a better one. I wished I was patient enough. I wished I was content and didn't allow my greed take over me. I became depressed. Suddenly, nothing made sense to me any longer. I became a shadow of myself. The thought of everything made me sick. Now I understand the saying that patience is a virtue. If I was patient enough, I would have been living in luxury right now, but my greed destroyed everything. I lost everything as a result of my greed. That's my story, guys. I'm not proud of what I have done. I take full accountability for my actions. I hope someone out there learns from my story. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Don't lose a good man because of material things. I learned the hard way. Believe me, everything wasn't worth it in the end. Most importantly, learn to be patient with your partners. Patience is a virtue everyone should possess.
My husband was the most insufferable man ever. You couldn't begin to comprehend the ego of the man. He had the audacity to kick me out of his house over a stupid game. He was also playing the game, so I thought he was okay with it. I didn't know my husband was conceited and petty, but do you guys want to know one thing about me? I was more petty. He tried to make me feel stupid and wanted to make sure I regretted it, but I decided to play at his own game. Yes, I played my husband at his own game of making sure I regretted my actions. I had to make sure he felt the regret himself, and it was a drastic war between us. Before this event, we had been cool. I had loved being married to my husband. He had been one of the most charming and nice people I had ever met. This was part of the reason that had attracted me to him. My name is Paige, and I'm 26 years old. My husband's name is Robert, and he's 29 years old. I had met Robert at my friend Lillian's birthday party. He had looked out of place. I had walked up to him, and we got talking. From there, I learned that he was studying to get his master's degree in investment and assets management at the University of Tulsa in Oklahoma. He had come all the way from Tulsa to Norman in OK for Lillian's birthday party because Lillian had told him she wanted him to meet someone. That someone had been me. After Lillian formally introduced us, we hit it off. From there, we quickly became friends and hung out on the weekends when he would drive down from Tulsa to see me or I would go visit him. I wasn't in college because I didn't attend and was always working to make ends meet back then. Anyway, the dynamic worked between us and I got to know his friends and he got to know mine with us and I got to know his friends and hang out with them and he got to know mine. We started dating 2 years later when he was done with his master's program and began working as a stockbroker for a financial company in Tulsa. And then he told me to move to Tulsa and start living with him. I had been in between jobs at that moment, so I had agreed. Once I moved to Tulsa, I got a job as a customer rep at a 5-star hotel and got to know my husband even more as I was living with him. Again, our dynamic worked even living together. I became closer with his friends and I would have said family, but my husband didn't have any family. He had been orphaned at the age of 6 and had grown up in the system. All the houses he had been put in didn't turn out well for him because of the parents of the families, but he had still remained friends with the people he had met in the system. This is why he had friends and not family. Anyway, after a year of dating, my husband proposed to me. It hadn't been an outstanding ceremony, but we had his friends, and the few friends I had from Norman and the one I had made in Tulsa had cheered for us as my husband bent down on one knee to ask me to be by his side forever. I've been married to my husband for 3 years now, and during that time, I've become a hotel concierge, and he's gone on to open his own firm. We decided on not having kids till at least 5 years into our marriage. It was a joint decision as we wanted to enjoy our time as a married couple before children would come into the mix. We decided we would do all the fun things as couples, go on adventures, attend parties, just basically be childish together until our set mark to have children. I had loved the idea of getting to experience fun things as a married couple. I just hadn't expected my husband to be someone who couldn't take a joke or someone who was overly insecure. This was the beginning of our problems. My husband had been invited to a house party by one of his foster friends. It was meant to be just an indoorsy kind of thing. I'm sure you guys get the vibe. We got there and then discovered it wasn't a small gathering of 5 we had expected. There were over 15 people present, people my husband and I didn't know except the host. The party was quiet for the first 2 hours. You know, people just trying to get to know each other and all. Do you want to know what I was doing during that time? I stuck to my husband like the loving and devoted wife I was. I was literally glued to his side. And my husband was mid-social. He only talked to you if you talked to him. He wasn't the kind to walk up to strike up a conversation, so the people getting to know us were the ones coming around to talk to my husband, despite his broody face. Then, after 2 hours of basic socializing with music in the background, the host, who was my husband's friend, claimed the party was too dull and something needed to be done to liven it up. Boom. Someone suggested a game of spin the bottle and over half of the guests present agreed. In a room full of adults past the age of 25, over half wanted to play a childish game, and I was one of them. I was excited because it had been a long time since I partook in something like that. Call me childish if you may. But I had raised up my hand along with 8 other people when the host called for volunteers. As you would have guessed, my husband was already boiling with anger, and he told me in hushed words that I shouldn't join in on the game. He had been quite stern when he had said I shouldn't join, but I saw it as him trying to spoil my fun for the evening. After all, he had been the one that had brought me to the party in the first place, and when it began to liven up, he wanted to stop my fun? Ain't no way that was going to happen. I joined in without his consent, and only when the bottle had already landed on one of the ladies in the circle did I realize that it was only singles that had joined in to play the game. Did I regret my actions at that point in time? Yes, I did, but I couldn't back out then because the point of our whole pact, my husband and I, was to be adventurous and so fun in our marriage before we had to start carrying on the responsibility of children that other people would be envious of what we have. And if I had backed put, then they would see my husband as overbearing, which he was, and they would see me as no fun, which I wasn't. So I stuck to the game. What was the worst thing that could have happened? I realized the worst thing that could happen a few minutes later when the bottle mouth pointed to me and the bottle end pointed to a guy that wasn't part of my husband's friend group. Then the guy dared me to take off a piece of my clothing. The murmurs had started up immediately because other people apart from the stupid dimwit had realized I was a married woman, and they were all looking back and forth between my husband and I to see if an alpha fight would break out. Well, my husband didn't do anything, and the stupid dimwit finally realized there was a ring on my finger and then settled for a peck on the cheek. I could do that with ease, and all the tension would calm. That was what I had thought to myself. I was wrong as always. The tension didn't calm. In fact, it grew worse because as I turned to give the stranger a peck, and he shifted his face, which made me give him a kiss on his mouth. I gave a stranger a kiss by mistake, and my husband had seen it. Everyone that had been around the circle had pretended not to see that the guy had turned on purpose. They all just kept silent and avoided my eyes. But my husband had seen it. I was ashamed at first, of course. I had been ashamed because one random stranger had gotten the best of me. He had turned his head deliberately. Apparently, my husband hadn't seen it as the mistake it was. He saw it as defiance, and he didn't spare any words in telling me how I had disrespected him and blah, blah, blah. He was mad, but I was mad too because I had also tried explaining that the kiss had been a mistake. It had never been my intention to kiss a guy I had no idea who he was. However, what my husband was mad about was the fact that I had gone to play the game in the first place. According to him, if I hadn't gone to play the game, the kiss would have never happened. Can you guys imagine that? Wasn't he supposed to take my side first? Why was I the first on his list for appropriation of blame instead of the guy who had asked for a peck and turned a harmless peck into a mouth-to-mouth kiss? Well, I didn't argue further that night, and I remembered clearly that I had apologized. I had gone to sleep with the thought that all was finally well. You guys wouldn't believe the tantrum my husband threw the next day and the following days after it. He never let me forget it. And do you guys want to know the cherry on top of the cake? He kicked me out. After a full week of enduring his tantrums over a stupid spin-the-bottle game, my husband came back one evening from work and said he couldn't bear to see my face knowing that I had disrespected him in front of people he knew and didn't know. Can you guys begin to comprehend that lame reason? I had wounded his ego, and instead of maybe talking about it or maybe listening to me, because I wasn't the one wrong in any way, he decided to throw me out. I just knew it had been his friends. There had been no other logical reason why my husband would make that kind of rash decision. Well, by the next morning, my husband had brought out my luggage from my room and said we needed to take a break. Who in the world takes a break from marriage over one stupid kiss that had been a mistake? I was disappointed because I had thought he would sleep it off because it was mostly frustrations from work, and it wouldn't be a big deal, but I was proved wrong by the time morning came around. You guys can't begin to imagine my shock at waking up to get dressed for work and seeing my husband with my suitcase in his hand telling me he needed a break from our marriage. And do you know what he did when I told him I wasn't leaving? He became more justified in his action. He told me that this was my problem. According to him, I didn't respect his opinions. How was I supposed to respect him kicking me out of his house in a city where I didn't know anyone closely to ask them for a place to stay? But my husband hadn't put that fact into consideration. He just swung his ego around and didn't like that I hadn't sucked up to his stupid alpha tendencies. I left my husband's house to go and stay in one of the staff's rooms in the hotel where I worked. I had to stoop low to ask my coworkers if they had an extra place for me to sleep at their houses. To say I had been beyond livid wasn't even going to cut it, all because of a stupid kiss. If I had actually kissed the dimwit, then okay, I wouldn't have been so angry, but I hadn't deliberately kissed the man and see what I was suffering. So I decided to actually justify the reason why I was suffering so I wouldn't be suffering for nothing. After all, my husband had said he wanted us to take a break from our marriage, and I was going to do just that. And I did just that, you guys. I sought out the reason for the break in my marriage and decided to fully go for the kiss. Luckily, if you wanted to find anybody in Tulsa, just go by the major convenience store. They were bound to come by sooner or later, and the dimwit happened by. I had bumped into him on purpose, and he remembered me. Of course he would. I wasn't at all forgettable, except to my husband. Anyway, we hit it off and began going out. On one of those outings, when he had escorted me back to the staff room of the hotel I was staying in, I had sneakily grabbed him in and took the kiss that had caused a whole lot of trouble, and believe me, it had been worth it. From then on, we began sleeping together. This lasted for 2 whole months, and in that period of time, my husband never made to contact me, not even once. He never showed up at my workplace to ask of me or call my family to know if I had been doing well. Nothing. Nada. Meanwhile, the dimwit that had accidentally kissed me was treating me like I was his lady. I know you all must be wondering if he didn't know that I was married. He knew, but he also thought I had gone through a divorce. I lied that my husband and I being at the party was our last leap at trying to save our marriage, but after the party it didn't work out, and we officially divorced. My affair hadn't even seemed to mind. He treated me like an egg, thinking I had just gone through a rough divorce. It had been as easy as that, and I was having the time of my life. My affair took me on dates, was fun, didn't get worked up over something like my husband did, and wasn't one to throw tantrums. He listened, and I had thought I had hit the jackpot, you guys, with no husband attached to my status. I was happy. I was happy because even if my husband caught me cheating, there was no way he was going to blame it on me. He had been the one to insist on taking a break in our marriage after all. He hadn't specified what taking a break meant. I was so certain he was having the time of his life and expecting me to be somewhere in the corner sulking over the fact that he hadn't called me for 2 whole months. I mean, I might as well live my life like I wasn't married, right? The next week, my husband decided that he should call me. Like, could you imagine? He thought maybe I finally learned my lesson and we could start to live together again. My husband actually said that. As if our marriage was like a movie you could press pause and then play for. Lol, I had never lived a more hilarious moment in my life. You wanted me to learn to respect you, and what you do is kick me out of the house in the hopes that I would come crawling at your feet and begging you for forgiveness. My husband had another thing coming. I wasn't going to go back to him until he was the one who begged me to return. I wasn't a plaything. I was his wife, and he had treated me like garbage all because his friends had told him I didn't respect him from my actions at that stupid spin-the-bottle game. To be frank, I had never even wanted to go to that party, but my husband had coaxed me to go. I went to the party because of him. I stuck to his side the entire boring night, and when I got the opportunity to do something fun, he tried to coddle me. Did that seem fair? Then after he threw his tantrums for a full week, he went drinking with his friends and had listened to their drunk rantings about respect and their stupid ego and had got back and told me he wanted a break from marriage because I didn't respect him. And even if I didn't, it had just been a one-time thing. He decided that would be punishment for a one-time incident where I had disrespected him. Well, on the day he called me to tell me I could come back to his house, that our break was over, that day I decided my husband was going to grovel. And I succeeded. Yes, I did. My husband began calling me every day the following week after his first call when I had told him in plain terms that my break wasn't over yet. He started showing up to my workplace, disturbing my phone and my coworkers. All the things I had wanted him to do, but it was too late at that moment. He got me flowers and all the stuff that would make a woman weak in the knees, but I wasn't budging. I didn't plan on budging, but something else happened. I found out that I was pregnant. And before you all come for me that I had gotten pregnant for my affair and wanted to plant it on my husband, that wasn't true. Here was what happened. I had fainted one day at work and was rushed to the hospital. The doctor told me I had put my baby under great risk, and when I told him there was no way I was pregnant, he confirmed that I was already 6 months along. I had asked how it was possible I wasn't showing yet, and why I had felt no symptoms of the pregnancy, and the doctor told me my pregnancy was probably a cryptic one, and that wasn't a bad thing, as long as I didn't stress myself too hard. I only began seeing my affair 2 months from that time, so there was no way it was from him. So I had to go back to my husband. But I didn't tell him I was pregnant just yet. I wanted to see how he would treat me because in my mind I didn't think our marriage would work again. Believe me, I wanted it too, but I didn't think it would because I knew my husband was going to find out about my affair. When I got back to his house, I knew our marriage was a ticking time bomb, but I decided to enjoy it because my husband decided he was going to keep groveling. He took me out on dates, shopping, sent me money unexpectedly, basically did things that had shown he was sorry, and I was on the lookout to see when the thread of good things would snap. My affair had started his own madness movement. He would disappear for days on end, and I just cut him off from there. My husband was back to his senses, so I had no need for him. Remember when I said it was only a matter of time before my husband reverted back to his tantrums? It wasn't even up to 2 weeks before he brought up the topic of me disrespecting him, and he told me I shouldn't do it again, or he was going to leave me. There was another party that night that another one of his friends was hosting, and it was mandatory I attended with him for a reason I hadn't known. But everything happened for a reason. The party was the snapping factor of my marriage. Before the party, I had planned to tell my husband, but he had gotten me so outraged with the "don't disrespect me" talk, so I didn't tell him then and planned to do so after the party. Another mistake I made. My sleeping with another man was exposed at the party. I mean, you couldn't have written a better controversial script than the one that had happened at that party. It was so unbelievable. The man I'd had an affair with decided to show up at the party and saw me at the party with my husband and decided his ego couldn't take a little trip. He walked up to me and started yapping so loud that he got the attention of the party. When the murmurings increased, I knew they had caught wind of our conversation, and it wasn't long until my husband came into the conversation and understood what was going on. The look on his face was comical, because I had done the very thing he told me not to do when we had left for the party. My husband left the party without me, and when I got back home, he had locked me out and thrown my things out. Thank God I hadn't fully moved out of the staff room when that had happened. The next week, a lawyer called me and told me my husband wanted me to sign divorce papers, and I was to meet him at the office. I got there and my husband was already waiting for me. He was livid and flung the divorce papers in my face. Then that's when I dropped the bomb. I told him I was carrying his baby. Of course he didn't believe it, and at that point in time I couldn't be bothered if he believed it or not. I signed the divorce papers willingly because I didn't want to be married to him. I already knew our marriage was over, just like I had said before. If you're wondering if he asked for a paternity test, he did. My baby was born 2 months later, and my ex-husband got the paternity test and found out it was his daughter. Do you know this man had the effrontery to take me to court to deprive me of my right to take care of my child? He wanted to take my child from me. Luckily, the court didn't find any tangible evidence that I was a bad citizen and granted us both joint custody of our child, and he was fined for wasting their time. Served him right. Next time, he wouldn't be so stupid. I went back to Norman after the court settlement, and we agreed to him coming to see our child once in a month till my daughter grew older for him to be taking her on weekend visit to Tulsa. That's how my marriage ended, and in my heart, I have no grudges against my husband, but I hope he fixes his ego trip before he gets married again. And if you don't support my side of the story, I honestly don't care.